Good evening. We're studying chapter 12. And we're speaking about the Beinoni personality. And remember, the Sefer is called Sefer Shel Beinonim. So it was written for the Beinoni personality. It's about the Beinoni personality. And it's a type of personality that we should all strive for. The Beinoni personality is very interesting because of the inner struggle going on in himself. He has a godly soul that is very proactive, and he has an animal soul that's very proactive. The godly soul moves him and inspires him to do what's right. The animal soul, the nefesh habahamis, that is active in him and proactive in him, and it puts in his mind ideas which are possibly sinful. He has attraction to physical pleasures, and even to forbidden pleasures. And in that sense, he is similar to a Rasha, because both a Rasha and a Beinoni have active both animal soul and a godly soul. In practicality, the Beinoni is similar to the Tzaddik, because practically the Beinoni is in control of himself, and therefore, although he has an attraction to physical pleasures, and even possibly to sin, but he doesn't act out on that. His behavior is the behavior of a Tzaddik. His inner structure is that of a Rasha. So that's why he's a Beinoni. He's a Beinoni because he has both of these qualities in himself. And he explained here in the first section of this 12th chapter that the Beinoni during davening is not only in control of his behavior and what he does, but he also is able to inspire himself and bring himself to a deep love for Hashem. And during his davening, he is more like a tzaddik, even in the inside, because during davening, his heart is filled with a love for Hashem. He's on fire with Hashem, the passion with Hashem. So therefore, in his davening, it's not only his actions are like a tzaddik, but also inside of him there's a tzaddik. And this is also very important, because this idea that a Beinoni is in control, and we're going to speak more about the control side of this, doesn't necessarily refine the Beinoni. In fact, in a Maimer of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe, he says there's two types of Beinoni. There's one type of Beinoni who doesn't have an inside passion and love for the spiritual, but he's always in control. He has total self-control. This type of Beinoni has a more difficult mission, because when he davens, he doesn't necessarily feel that love for Hashem. He doesn't necessarily have an appreciation for the Spirit, for Torah, an inner appreciation, a deeper understanding. He doesn't necessarily have a deep understanding. He's not necessarily refined in the inside, but he has Kabbalas oil, and he is enough of control himself that he controls his behavior in machshava, dibra, maisha, and thought, and speech, and in action. So that is one level of a Beinoni. The deeper level of a Beinoni, which is more portrayed in Tanya, is that he is refined on the inside as well. And therefore, when he davens, he does feel that passion for Hashem. And the inside, therefore, during davening, he's like a tzaddik. Because it's not only on the outside, in his behavior, is he doing what's right, but also on the inside, he's doing what's right. And this is very important because in the Tanya and in the Hasidic literature, it says that the Beinoni, the one who is refined on the inside, that refinement helps him and empowers him to overcome his desires and control his desires. The first type of Beinoni that we spoke about, the one who has no inner fire ever, he has to be very disciplined because he is coarse inside. He's not refined inside. And his control is just behavior. Compare that to the second type of Beinoni personality, who this Beinoni also works himself on the inside, and he has refined himself to the inside that during the day there are moments that he feels and senses the beauty of the spiritual, of Ruchnius. And during davening he has a fire and he feels his closeness to Hashem. And when he studies Torah, he feels the refinement and the beauty of Torah. The Rebbe speaks about these two types of Beinoni personalities, and he points out that the second one, who also refined himself, at least partly on the inside, this makes him, so to say, a better person, and also makes it easier for him to overcome those moments of weakness and temptation, because he has that inner appreciation of the spirit of Ruchnius. So therefore, coming to the text we're reading now, the Beinoni, after davening, even the Beinoni personality that when he davens is on fire with what is spiritual, even that Beinoni personality, after davening, when he walks the street, he will be attracted to the pleasures of this world and will be tempted even to sin. He won't actually sin because that's non-negotiable in him, as we spoke in last week's class. But he senses in that same heart, where minutes before when he was davening he felt a passion for Hashem, after davening suddenly he's going to feel aroused in his heart a passion for worldly pleasures which may not be very refined. That's the struggle of the Beinoni and the opposite forces that are in the Beinoni. And how is this possible that right after davening and when he walks the streets he suddenly feels an attraction to things that are far from holy? So he explains, Rak mipnei shalai levadei mishpat hamlucha v'hamshala bo'ir. Why? Because the Beinoni is not the one who is totally the animal soul is not totally in control. So even though after davening he is attracted and he senses, and his heart feels and is close to worldly pleasures, and it's as if the davening that he had minutes before is forgotten and gone. He suddenly sees himself being attracted to things that he would have never imagined when he was in the midst of his davening and in the passion of his davening. So how does this work? It's because he didn't change his inner side. So now that he has this new awakening for worldly pleasures, what's going to happen? So he's in control. Why is he in control? Because his animal soul was not the only one in control of his persona. He he cannot realize and act out on his desires. His animal soul will not take control of his body to act out on those desires that he senses in his heart and in his body. He has his body and his heart is desires worldly pleasures, but his persona is not totally in control of his animal soul. Someone who's a Rasha, when he has desires, his desires are going to be expressed and realized, and that even in a sinful way, because his godly soul is not in control. Certainly, in the moment when he is sinning, when he is acting out on his pleasures. But by the Beinoni, it's not that way. He will not only hold himself back from acting out on those pleasures, but he adds here a line which is very interesting. He won't allow himself to dwell and to indulge in thinking about those physical pleasures. He won't think about how, I could indulge myself even more and come up with ideas and read up and about, what pleasure didn't I feel that I'm now going to feel? Which is something that's interesting. He's describing the refinement of the Beinoni to give us a total picture of the Beinoni. It's interesting because it's telling us that the Beinoni personality is not only about what is forbidden and what is allowed. It's not only about the 613 mitzvahs, but the Beinoni won't allow him to indulge himself in thinking in the world about the worldly pleasures, which is important to discuss a bit and elaborate a bit. Hashem created pleasure. Hashem created us with a body, and He programmed this body to sense pleasure. Hashem did this because it is necessary for man to have pleasure. The body needs pleasure to live. The Gemara says that at one time our sages were able to force nature against the pleasures of forbidden relationships, and the result was that there was no relationships. So Hashem programmed us that there should be desire. And this desire, so to say, makes the world go round, as long as it's kosher. But Hashem programmed us that way. But Hashem also gave us a godly soul and gave us intelligence to find the right balance. And Torah teaches us the right balance. So Torah tells us, get married and have children, and forbids us to having relationships that are forbidden to have. Torah tells us, eat, and that's why you feel hunger, and that's why you feel pleasure when you eat, so you should eat with appetite and so on, and want to eat. But told us these foods are kosher and these foods are not. What happens when someone, towards the use of Tanya, he's dwelling about his indulgences. How am I going to fulfill my pleasures? Which in philosophy they call this hedonism. A hedonist, his whole life, his whole thing is, what about my pleasures? And he's not having enough fun, so how can I have even more fun? And that's why a lot of people today in the modern world are by psychologists and psychiatrists and trying this thing and that thing because they're so obsessed with physical pleasures, and then they feel that they're losing out because they're not not enjoying themselves and not having fun. Maybe there's more fun than the fun that I have. Maybe there's more pleasure than the pleasure that I have, etc., etc. And this is a corrupting force. So even though is that the Torah say that don't think about how to indulge yourself in pleasures, there's no law in the Torah that you shouldn't dwell upon how to fulfill pleasures. There's no law in the Torah. But on the other hand, a Torah personality, a personality that Hashem wants us to be, is not someone who's obsessed with physical pleasures. And certainly in the words lahamik machshavte. Lahamik means he's in depth. His thought is an in-depth thought about the pleasures of this world, how to fulfill his desires. So Beinoni doesn't do that. That's a reflection on the Beinoni personality. And this I think all of us should work on, and we would be healthier for. Now, how is it possible? How is it possible that he should do this? How does he control? Since there's this struggle, and this is the big question. Since there's an inner struggle going on in him, how is he in control? Put a seat for her. So how is he in control? What's the secret of the Beinoni? What is the secret of success in the Beinoni? If you have this struggle, and especially he's saying that when he is in davening, he's on fire with Hashem. And then when he goes out, a few minutes later, his baser desires are reawakened, and now he is feeling all those sensations. So how does he handle it? How is he able to control himself? Here's one of the most famous lines in Tanya: Ki hamoyach shalat al halev. The brain rules over the heart. It's a line from Zohar, Kamesha Kasa B'Rayim Mehem in Parshas Pinchas. Ki hamoyach shalat al halev b'til dasei v'tevi tzirasei. The nature of man is that the brain rules over the heart, mind over matter. And that is part of the inner programming of man. Hashem programmed us that the brain rules over the heart. That every man yachol b'rtzayne shebemoichei le'esapek v'limshol beruach tavaseh shebelibay. Every man is created and programmed in a way that he can rule over the passions of his heart. He can rule over these passions, that it should not come into action, into speech, and even into thought. So here's the key. The key is that the brain is the control tower of our world. Like in an airport, you have a control tower, directs the traffic, what's coming and what's going. That's called, the word control tower, it's a tower that controls. The brain is in control. The wiring, Hashem wired us that we can control our impulses. We can't control it. And that's why even though the Beinoni is attracted naturally to these impulses, nevertheless, they can be controlled. Because the brain controls the heart. This is the idea of willpower. There's the famous Marshmallow Test that a psychiatrist tested, where he tested children, young children, and he wanted to test their character. He put in front of a child. The child was alone in a room, one at a time. He put in front of them a marshmallow and told them that if you can eat the marshmallow whenever you want, but if you control yourself for 15 minutes, you get 2 marshmallows. So some children, they were looking at the marshmallow, debating, negotiating, but many of them, after a few minutes, ate the marshmallow. But there were those who waited the 15 minutes, and after 15 minutes, the teacher came in, they gave them now two marshmallows. They delayed their gratification, the gratification of their desire and impulse for the sweets of a marshmallow. This professor made a study, and this is a famous study, one of the most famous studies in psychiatry concerning discipline. These children, when they were 40 years old, they were already mature adults, he checked on them to see the rest of the story. The ones who were able to control themselves and wait the 15 minutes were the ones that were much more successful than the ones that gave in to their impulses. And the reason is obvious, because if you give in to your impulses, so you're only thinking about now, but not thinking about the long-term benefit of your behavior. So Hashem programmed us that we should be seichel. We should use our seichel. We should use our brains. We should use our intelligence. And we should use the intelligent. We should make intelligent choices. And therefore he programmed us that our intelligence should rule over our impulses. Now, there are people who corrupted this basic nature, and they messed up their wiring, like in every programming, a computer programming, a virus can mess it up. Every type of organizational structure, every time, natural structure and human structure, psychological structure, any type of structure can be corrupted. And therefore also, there may be addicts that are totally not in control of themselves because they corrupted this programming. But he's telling us that Teva Yitzirasai, the nature by which Hashem created humanity, is such that mind rules over matter. Therefore, in order not to fulfill and follow the desires of his heart, and not only that, he adds, that he has enough control to put his mind to get involved in other things, opposite things, to get away from the impulses of his heart. In other words, why his heart feels, and an impulse is telling him to do something or think something or say something. So not only is he control to hold himself back from doing that, but he can put his mind into something else. There's the story, I forgot the details, of this Yid who came to one of the Hasidic Rebbes. I don't remember, it wasn't the Chabad Rebbe, but it was one of the Hasidic teachers. And he came to him to because he couldn't control himself. Thoughts were coming in the thing. He was acting impulsively. And he traveled at a distance to see this tzaddik. So the tzaddik was a holy man, and a holy man senses what's going on around him. So this yid comes to the tzaddik. It was a wintry day, and he knocks on the door. He understood the tzaddik was home. Maybe he could see some things going on inside. And no one answers the door. No one answers the door. And the tzaddik tells his household, don't answer the door. I'm going to open the door for him. He's knocking. It's freezing outside. So first it's a polite knock, then he knocks harder and harder. He's banging at the door. He can't stay outside. He's freezing. Finally, the tzaddik opens the door. So he says, Rabbi, tzaddik, I was waiting here so long. You didn't hear me? He says, I'm sorry, I apologize. But I heard you the first time you knocked. So why didn't you knock? Why didn't you open the door? I don't understand. So I wanted to teach you that not everything that knocks on the door, not everything that knocks on your door, on the door of your mind, do you have to open it? So he says, I understood. The tzaddik sensed why this man came. This man came because he has all these mishagas coming into his head, and everything he thinks about, he has to act out. So he says, the tzaddik says, sit down, I want to teach you something. What'd you come here for? And he says his whole story. I came here because I'm not in control of myself. All thoughts come into my mind, and I can't help it because I walk in the streets and I see this and I see that, and this one tells me this one tells me that, and I have these images and all this mishagas. So he says, you saw by the door. Your mind has a door, and your eyes have a door, and your mouth has a door. You can open it or you can close it. You have to be in control of yourself. You have to learn how to control. So the Beinoni is in control. Not only to hold himself in, but to change, to direct the traffic like a control tower. This plane has to go, and this plane is going to land, and when it's going to land, and when it's going to go, when the arrivals come, and otherwise. Now he continues that this, what we spoke about, how moyach shalat ala lev, that the brain rules over the heart, this, so to say, power of control. This is a human nature that applies to the human being in general. There's a special advantage when you're speaking about things that are holy, kedusha. And when you are involved in what is holy, kedusha, there's an extra power besides the regular human capacity of mind over matter. There's also, if you're dealing with having the holy side, being in control of what's unholy, holy is more powerful than the unholy. Even though sometimes it seems to us that the unholy side prevails, and it seems to us, so to say, the bad guys are ahead, and the lie is what gains, but in fact it's not so. In the end, and the reality is, truth prevails, and holiness prevails. And he says, especially this power that the Beinoni has to overcome his impulses and to change his course when he has these impulses and attractions. So he can not only control himself, but guide it in a different direction, especially if he is using holiness, kedusha. B'frat al tzad kedusha, to direct himself to the side that's holy, kediksiv. And he brings a verse. Pasuk says in Kehelis, "V'ra'isi sheyesh Yisrael lachachma nasichles ki Yisrael ha'ir ben ha'chayshech." The Sefer Kehelis says, Shlomo Melech, who the wisest of all, said, "I see the advantage of wisdom over foolishness is like the advantage of light over dark." So the Tanya is going to explain why is this comparison. Yeah, it's good. Wisdom over foolishness is okay. Foolishness is like the marshmallow story. The kid is a fool. He could have 2 marshmallows, and that's why that group of children who grew up, who were following impulse, who were impulsive, they were not as successful as the children who were not impulsive. They were later in life much more successful. So you see, there's an advantage of you being wise over impulsive. Impulsive he calls here foolishness. Why does he compare it to the advantage of light over darkness? So the Alter Rebbe is explaining light, a little bit light, chases away a lot of darkness. And it's automatic. If you have light, there is no darkness. Bring light, and darkness will vanish. And like the old saying is, you don't chase away darkness with a stick. It's not that you're busy, this darkness and problem, this problem, that problem, that problem. I'm dealing with a Yetzer Hara and this terrible desires that I have, or emotional mishagas that he has. He's full of jealousy and full of ego and he's glutton and lustful and totally impulsive person. So how do I fight this detail and that detail? How do I fight this ego, this, that? He says, find light. Bring holiness in yourself. And bring light in your place, automatically the darkness will move away. In the place of dark light, there won't be darkness. So bring Yiddishkeit in your life. Bring Hashem in your life. Bring Torah in your life. You'll bring Torah in your life. You're going to put a light in your life. Automatically, the darkness will move away from you. So therefore, it's not just a question of mind over matter, which is a general human quality, but light over darkness, the light of holiness, of kedusha, of godliness. So in the face of light, the other side loses its strength, and it's automatically. Just like light has an advantage and control on darkness, automatically it pushes away darkness. So to automatically is pushed aside the foolishness of the left side of the klippa. Our sages say that a person does not sin. Naturally, a person should not sin. How should a person who has seichel go against Hashem? It's unnatural for a person to be impulsive. A person is created with intellect, so his life should be guided by intelligent choices. So if we have such brains, how is it that people do things that are impulsive, even sinful? So the Gemara says, a ruach shtus, He has a shtus, foolishness, and even insanity. It's a form of insanity. He's not being rational. It's irrational to be impulsive. And it's irrational to follow his impulses that is going to hurt his relationship with Hashem. Asher tzayna limshel so mipnei hachachma shebenefesh lekis shevemayach. Asher tzayna limshel avada beir l'slabesh b'shlalish l'usanal b'chol haguf kol kanal shemachshava dibra ma'isa teyak mitzatera kanal. So the person who tunes into his godly soul, this is bringing the light into his life, and he will automatically lessen the darkness or remove the darkness that is in him, and therefore he could change. He could change the direction his desires are taking him to follow what is right with holiness. This is also something that is important. He uses the word Yesh Yisrain Ushlito Memshal Ala Chayshach. The light has an advantage and also rules over darkness. The idea that the mind rules over the heart, we find in Chassidus that there are two ways where the brain rules over the heart. What he's discussing in this chapter is willpower, control. But in addition to the willpower and control, there's also what we learned in an earlier chapter in Tanya, in the 3rd chapter, that the brain creates emotion. The brain fathers and gives birth to emotion. If you want to reshape your emotions, you meditate with your brain. To bring oneself to love of Hashem, think about it. And even in human relationships, sometimes we don't think about those who we should love, to love them enough, because our head is all over the place. But if we think about it, we can even change an emotion. When we realize that someone who we may have thought is our enemy is really our best friend. And if someone is going to think about it and understand and realize, and it does make sense, it has to be intelligent. And if the logic that he's going to realize is that this is something that is in his advantage, and that person is his best friend, he'll come to have positive feelings and even love towards that person. And certainly that is how we develop a love for Hashem, is to meditate about how good Hashem is to us as an individual, how good Hashem is to us as a people. And this meditation is because the brain is stronger than the heart, that it can control the inside of the heart. Not only the impulses, not only does the brain capable of controlling our behavior, it can also control our personality, to change our emotions. There are certain therapies that are about that a person should think intelligently, cognitive therapies, different therapies, that a person should come to a deeper understanding of himself and therefore see himself differently. It's a reprogramming of his inner side, not just control of himself. And perhaps that's what he's saying about the light. There's an advantage of the light of Torah, because he realizes and sees the light, and when he sees the light, he is convinced about the beauty of Yiddishkeit, and is convinced that he should refine himself, and he eventually refines himself, because since the brain rules over the heart, so he realized by seeing the light, he calling it the light of holiness, and he sees that light changes him internally, and that's what works for the Beinoni when he davens. By davening, his mind rules over his heart, his emotions of the heart. After davening, when his godly soul is already pushed aside, and the passions of his animal soul come to the fore, he's still in control of his impulses by the fact that the brain rules over the heart. Not only necessarily changes the heart. And even though by the Beinoni he's in control, he's still not a tzaddik. And now he's going to elaborate a few lines about why is the Beinoni not a tzaddik. If he's in total control, so why is he not a tzaddik? And he is able to bring the light of his neshama, the light of holiness, to push away the darkness that's coming upon him, that's encroaching him. But when he's out there in the street, so he says, and that is because this light that he is able to shine in himself is only controlling his behavior, but he is not able to bring a light to completely eradicate his animalistic desires. He doesn't change his selfhood. The Beinoni is able to bring the light to control his behavior, what he does, not what he is. The Beinoni is able to use the light of Torah to control what he does, not what he is. He cannot redefine his selfhood. That's why what he does is called in Tanya here and throughout the previous chapters, the levushim. What we do is like the garment of our soul. You can change your garments, but it's very hard to change yourself. The Beinoni is not a tzaddik, because he was never successful in changing his inner selfhood. He is in control, but cannot reshape himself into being a tzaddik. That's what makes the Beinoni very interesting. And in fact, it says in Tanya later on that most people were not created to change their selfhood. We weren't created to recreate your inner self. We were created to control ourselves. The 630 mitzvahs are what you do, not what you are. And Hashem is watching the life that we lead and the challenges that we face in order to bring out the warrior in each one of us. The warrior who is always facing the dragon of the Yetzer Hara that is trying to convince us to follow impulses. But now we're into the definition of the Beinoni. Why is the Beinoni different than the Tzaddik? So he says because even though the Beinoni is able to control himself, but that's the levushim, the garments, his deeds, what he does. That's what he controls. But his essential nature, his essence, what he is, the essence of his godly soul is not able to reshape his animal soul. There is still a compartment within himself, which he calls the left side of his heart. It's in its place. Even when the Beinoni davens, it's latent. After davening, the Beinoni has in its place the animal soul, and it's sending his signals, and it's attracted to the physical and the material, and even the forbidden. By davening, he says, the godly soul by a Beinoni does encroach. It goes into his left side, and it knocks out his left side. By davening the Beinoni is so full of love for Hashem and connecting to the Spirit. Or by learning a Beinoni, by his learning, can be learning with such a passion and such a drive that in his left side even his animal soul is knocked down. At that moment, he's like a tzaddik. But afterwards, even though the animal soul doesn't express itself to act out on his desires, it's still there. It has its place where it's still there. So to say, the bear is in his cave. So if you're camping out in the forest where the bear is in his cave, you got to be wary. Never let the bear come out of its cave. So if you can figure a way how to, block the entrance of the cave, so that's what you do. You have to figure out a way to control the entrance of the cave and the exit of the cave. But you still always have to be on guard. Maybe the bear is going to push away the whatever blockage you have. So by the Russia, the bear leaves the cave and is in control of the forest, so you're on the run. The Beinoni is not on the run because he was able to corner the bear and get him into the cave, and he's blocked the cave and he's in control of the situation. But he is in a place where there is a bear. The bear is in the cave. Because it didn't leave, it wasn't pushed completely aside. So because there is no when the Beinoni davens, he's on fire. So then also the animal soul is so to say very put down. But when the Beinoni finishes davening, and his God and his persona at that moment, he doesn't feel a love in his heart that is awakened right now, at that moment. It's after davening. He just has the hidden love that is always existence by every Yid. After davening, so then the animal soul comes to the fore, because when he is davening, so he's on fire with his feelings for Hashem, and feelings of the spirit, then he's in total control. And this is the advantage of the Beinoni. The Beinoni, the second type of Beinoni that we spoke in the beginning of the Shir, the Beinoni that was able to reshape himself on the inside to a significant degree, where there are moments when he davens, when he learns Torah with a passion, to refine himself, so to say, on the inside. But afterwards, even that Beinoni, afterwards, so to say, the bear is pushing its luck, it's pushing at the entrance. The bear is peeking out here, it's peeking out over there, and he has to stay on guard to chase the bear into the cave. He has to chase. After davening, the bear is pushing its luck, it's trying to come out here. And therefore, he does feel a pull in his heart for his Yetzer Hara. And even he will have desires and be attracted to even things that are forbidden. If it's something forbidden, although he may feel an attraction for what is forbidden, but he doesn't have that push to actually do it. Because he has a red line, as we said the other shir, there's things that are non-negotiable by a Beinoni. Anything that's forbidden is non-negotiable. It's a red line. Things that are permissible, that are indulgences. So as we said before, the Beinoni generally is refined. So he does entertain the idea to follow his indulgences as long as they're kosher. So that is a stronger push in him. The push that is in him, and the drive to do things forbidden, he is attracted to the things that are forbidden, but it's not to the degree that he's actually do it. He won't even entertain the idea. What's going to happen is that thought of sin will come into his head, not to do it, but then to think about it, and that's is going to distract him from doing what is right. Chazal tell us, the Gemara says, there are three sins which there's no man that can save himself from these three sins. And one of them is thoughts of sin. So the Gemara says you can't control thoughts of sin. Ein adam nitzel mehen. And concentration in davening, even tefillah. Although when we daven, we have to concentrate the whole time of davening, to concentrate on the davening. But there's no man who could say that he is in full control the whole davening. There's a third thing that the Gemara says, and that is avak lashon hara, which is what's called borderline slander. You know, if for example, if I say we have a conversation and suddenly someone's name comes up, Jack's name is on the table, and I have stuff on Jack, but that would be lashon hara, and I don't speak lashon hara. So the discussion is not about Jack, and I say, let's not talk about Jack. I don't want to talk about Jack. Did I say anything bad about Jack? No. But I hinted that there is something bad about Jack. Because I said, no, let's not talk about Jack. No, I don't want to go into Jack. That's called havak lashon hara. So that's also forbidden. So the Alter Rebbe doesn't mention that over here because that's also some form of speech. Over here, the Alter Rebbe's goal is to tell us that the Beinoni is not in control of what enters his mind. So therefore, he may be in the street and see an image and be attracted to that, and it's going to actually, he's going to feel a sensation in his brain of a forbidden thought. That thought will enter his mind is beyond his control because his heart has not changed. and he has a Yetzer Hara, an animal soul. Like we said, there's that bear that's still in the cave, and every now and then he pokes his head out of the cave. So, but the Beinoni is in control to put him back into the cave, and so I'm not going to think about that. This is forbidden. Don't follow your heart and your eyes. So the tzaddik, there's in the tzaddik's world there is no bear, there's no cave, and there's no bear in the cave. But in the Beinoni's world, he's living in a world where there's a bear. The only thing he was successful in putting the bear into the cave, but every now and then the bear sticks his head out, and if he's going to allow it to go further, come further out, that's when it's going to take control of the whole situation. But the Beinoni doesn't allow that to happen. So therefore, the Beinoni is not a tzaddik because those thoughts enter his mind, because his feelings towards the sensual and even the sinful, the feelings are there, but he has the challenge of controlling it. And as I mentioned before, this is something that is Hashem created the Beinoni not to be a tzaddik. This is even it says in Tanya, most people, I have no free choice in this. We have freedom of choice to do what's right, to do the 613 mitzvahs. In the 613 mitzvahs, it doesn't say reform yourself to the degree you won't have any animalistic desires. 613 mitzvahs says control yourself. And this everybody is capable. And this is one of the special themes in Tanya, that Tanya is teaching us that our life's mission is not the impossible. If the life's mission would be to change yourself, your inner selfhood, to rewire yourself, that would be almost impossible. And Tanya is telling us that's not the life's mission. You are what you are, and your world has a bear in it, but put the bear in the cave and be on guard. That's a Beinoni. Have a good night.